It's day 3 of our descent into the depths of the Black Bonspiel. I hope you're all still tuning in regularly. If not, you can listen to all previous chapters on YouTube. Let's dive right in, shall we? In the last chapter, Wally McCrimmon agreed to repair the curling boots of Satan himself. After speaking to Satan, Wally debated theology with the local Reverend Pringle of the United Church, or Methodist Church as the good Presbyterian Willie knows it as. Finally, we saw how Willie expressed his consternation at the prohibition of curling on Sundays. The Black Bonspiel of Wally McCrimmon, Chapter 3. It had been a long drawn-out fall, shoving the curling season well ahead till the time when the rink building next to the McDougall implement shed would glow every night with light, echoing with the urgent shouts of skips directing their sweepers, and pulsing with the rhythmic hiss of sweeping corn brooms, punctuated by the sharp rakah of knockout rocks and the discreet clack-clock of double take-out stones that struck and quickly struck again. Wally's rink was made up of the town's 3 Charlie Browns. His lead was Crosscut Brown, a Finnish carpenter who curled first rock. His second, Malleable Brown, a blacksmith. His third, Pipe-fitting Brown, a plumber who hardly ever failed to set Skip Wally up for the final end. Crosscut, however, could sometimes blow a rock because he had a lower disc problem. If it slipped out on him, he could end up far short of the hog line, or go right through the house. His other problem was his wife, Annie. By contrast, Malleable was happily married. More to the point, he was a steady second and tended to discourage opponents with his appearance. He was a big man, with the mighty forearms of the blacksmith, and the slightly scorched look and smell that went with the trade. Like him, pipe-fitting was a solid chunk of a man. There was about him the wild smell of oakum and solder, an aura that clung to his overalls and lingered in his wake. Like the others, he was a consistent curler, not given to freak shots. Possessed of the same unyielding nerve essential to a knockout game, the monotonous offensive the McCrimmon rink played as they took out rock after rock of the opposing players as soon as they were guarding the ring or in the house. This year of reluctant weather they had all yearned for below-zero weather and ice. So why in the hell was the devil so urgent about getting his curling boots resoled in just 3 weeks' time, Willie wondered. He shouldn't have. The devil had it in his wicked power to call all the shots, including the weather, and 2 days after his visit the heavens opened to bewilder Shelby with a record blizzard that dropped the thermometer to 20 below. Wally was at his last, with the Quebec heater going full blast to defeat the shop chill, when pipe-fitting came in, stomping his feet. "Who'd have thought it? Couple of days she'd be froze up tired of both's ass in fly time." He headed for the heater, taking a cup off the corner of the counter. "Colder than the tip of a polar bear's eye. Pour me one too, pipe. Looks like old King Winter's quit dragging his ass and covered all the Shelby district with a pure and snowy blanket. You sure do keep your eyes peeled, pipe. 3 sugar." He knocked off cutting Dr. Fitzgerald's riding boots uppers with a diamond inlay of white kid and sat down in one of the kitchen chairs next to the Quebec heater. As he handed Welly his coffee, Pipe-fitting said, "How many years I've been curling third for you?" 22. You're a fine one, Pipe-fitting. "We're all good, Welly. You're skipping one hell of a rank." "Aye. This year we're going to be better than we've ever been. We'll be hotter than a firecracker. I bet Doc Fitzgerald won't stand no chance against us. No more than a gopher through a 36-inch threshing machine." "Let's hope so." "Near McConkey either. We'll take him down." "We'll see." "Yeah." Pipe-fitting tipped his cup aside. He got up to pour himself another. "I had a dream last night, Wally. Curling dream. That Dominion finals we seen 30 years back." 32. I know. That sure was some match in the Glenmore Club." "Glencoe," Willie corrected. "That rock that won it, extra ends, 11th and 12th. Yeah, straight and sweet and true as a Baptist fart through a brass curtain rod for a double takeout and stay. What a shot! A, a remembering smile grew over Willie's face as he leaned his head back in the comforting warmth and closed his eyes. The Canadian Brier playoffs of provincial champions for the championship of Canada and the whole world. Wally was no longer hearing Pipe Fitting's dry voice droning on and on. Within himself, he was hearing a band playing "O Canada." He was seeing a man dressed in dinner jacket march smartly over to the ice to the center. For the Grand Championship of the World, the Grand Championship of Curling, the Canadian Brier Playoffs will be officially opened by the Governor General of Canada. As the announcer waved to the Governor General rose, clasping both hands aloft to the throng, then sat down. He leaned to the man on his right, the Prime Minister. Yes, I know. Exciting and uncertain times. Elizabeth rang me long distance from the palace 3 times today. Asked me to stay in Ottawa, but I had to refuse her. Yes. Asked me what could be more pressing than a world crisis of this magnitude. Sorry, I said, but I must go. Begged me until I told her. Brier playoffs, Your Majesty, I told her. Canadian Brier. I'm going to open them by curling an opening rock. Well, old boy, she said, hadn't realized. By all means go. And if there's one thing I want my Governor Generals to do, it's to properly open the brier. He lifted a languid hand to signal his uniformed aides, who, staring rigidly ahead and carrying curling brooms with heads aloft, stood in the splendor of epaulettes and Glengarry hats at attention beside his throne. As they smartly presented their brooms, the Governor General rose and walked slowly ahead of them to the end of the first sheet of ice. Pipers followed. His Excellency the Governor General, brave in crimson and in gold braid, solemnly grasped the handle of the nearest granite rock, and placed a dignified toe in the hack. One arm came slowly back, then swung slowly forward to release the opening rock of the Canadian Brier. As he stood up, aides rushed forward to brush ice crystals from vice-regal knees. Then came the preparatory squeal of chanters from the pipers, the slow surf of drones, then full and exquisite under the sounding board of the low rink roof. The march of Black Donal, Balloch to the battle of Inverlochy. There was stirring pibroch at the final finish of the Bonspiel to put a man's heart in his throat, while the cup was being presented to Skip Welly McCrimmon and his winning rink from Shelby, Alberta. The winner, grand champions of the Canadian Brier Playoffs, champions by 1 rock of the Dominion of Canada, and therefore of the world. There was a long pause by the announcer for effect. Skip Willie McCrimmon and his rink made up of lead, Crosscut Charlie Brown, second, Malleable Charlie Brown, third, Pipe Fitting Charlie Brown, all of Shelby, Alberta. The Governor General came rushing down the ice, slipping and sliding with precarious and undignified balance, followed by the aides, and in the rear the Prime Minister of Canada. Here, I must meet him. Who is this man? The Governor General was demanding excitedly. Willie McCrimmon, your Governor Generalship? Yes, I must shake the hand that curled that last rock. The winning takeout rock, the finest rock ever curled. In the hard on his heels came the Prime Minister. After you, I must speak with this man. Never have I seen such curling. He must come to Ottawa and curl there for my ministers, who were unable to see this, who were in special session of cabinet. I certainly must not disappoint them. There was the Governor General, throwing his arms over the Prime Minister's shoulder in comradely fashion, or perhaps to better preserve his balance on the curling ice. By all means do this. Let them see it in Ottawa. Let them see for themselves what we have seen today. This Willie McCrimmon and his men from Shelby. I will have them come up and curl in Rideau Hall's private rink. The Prime Minister broke in. They shall have a 10-course meal in the Senate restaurant, free of charge. We'll mark it off against the account of the Minister of. Let me pick up the check for this one, the Governor General was pleading. The Prime Minister waved him aside. No, no, let the Government of Canada be host to William McCrimmon and his men. Crosscut Brown, Malleable Brown, Pipe-fitting Brown will have an all-Canadian banquet. Newfoundland cod tongues or cheeks, Nova Scotia lobster, Winnipeg gold-eye, or BC salmon for the fish course. Alberta beef sirloin with Prince Edward Island potatoes, baked or mashed, and New Brunswick fiddlehead greens. Dessert of choice of Ontario deep apple pie with Ontario cheddar, or Saskatoon pie, to be followed by the finest liquor of all, Dougie's Dew of Dunlop. There will be a presentation of the cup, as well as souvenirs for each and every one of them. They shall be given 14 carat gold spittoons from the Senate chambers, engraved with their names, so every time they spit, they shall remember this great occasion. There was Willie, kilted in his McCrimmon tartan and his best Scottish bonnet, and his men standing at attention with their tams and brooms as the Governor General handed each his spittoon and shook hands. The Prime Minister embraced them. Only Crosscut curtsied. The skirl of the pipes died away on the last notes of O Canada. Willie opened his eyes and shook himself a bit as he realized he had been dreaming. It was his one self-indulgence, this daydream that had started years ago as a sort of mental lay-me-down. Had grown more and more vivid with time, returning him fresh and exhilarated to his dark shop. From dream to dream, minor details might change. Sometimes a silk-hatted Prime Minister doffed his morning coat, and in snowy shirt-sleeves and white pipe vest curled a true slow rock down the ice. But always there was the sound of the pibroch, while Malleable, Crosscut, and Pipe-fitting stood proudly by. The gleaming briar cup was received into the trembling hands of Skip Willie McCrimmon. Pipe-fitting, said Willie in a low, fervent voice. I would give anything, utterly anything, for to skip the winning rink in the briar. The bell above the shop door had not tinkled. He stood next to the stitching horse, tan sample case and all. Overcoat opened, one hand nonchalantly in a side pant pocket, so that his jacket was pulled back to reveal the miniature cloven goat's hoof charm that swung from his watch chain. That's a bargain, Willie McCrimmon. Huh? Said Pipe-fitting, his mouth dropped open. That is a bargain. Willie McCrimmon. There was a long, long pause. Would you mind giving a bit of a twist to yon damper on the stovepipe? Asked Willie. Wee bit close in here? Pipe-fitting moved to the Quebec stove and twisted the protesting damper, keeping his eyes on the stranger all the while. Pipe-fitting? Meet old Clooty. Old Clooty? Beelzebub, Satan, old Scratch, old Nick, the devil, old Clooty. Ah, him. Pipe-fitting straightened politely. Pleasure. Come on, said Clooty. Take a seat, Mr. Clooty. Well, he said. You're early? Came through on an unscheduled trip involving an ungraded substitute school teacher and a Royal Bank cashier, lifting beer together in the ladies and escorts of the Arlington Arms Hotel. That be Maggie Sparrow and Ron Shepherd, Pipe-fitting said. That's right. The devil had rounded the counter to sit in a chair next to Willie. What's wrong with having a beer? Pipe-fitting said. Wee unimportant matter, isn't it? Willie said. For an unscheduled visit? At first glance, yes. But Mrs. Sadie Burbridge saw them go in together. She told Annie Brown, who in turn got on the party line for the greater part of it yesterday. Mrs. Brown looks quite promising to me. As an aside, a party line, for those of you who did not grow up in Leonard County 50 years ago, is when everyone in a certain geographic area all shared one phone line. So you would hear all of your neighbors' business and be able to share all of your business with them. So it's no surprise that Annie Brown, the great gossip that she was, took so much fun in indulging in sharing news on the party line. Let's get back to it. I'll say she does, Pipe Fitting said. Poor Crosscut. Just argy-bargy, isn't it? In itself, yes. But with this woman, it's the accreation that counts. Nothing really flashy in the way of sin goes on in Shelby. My regular calls are the Bluebird Cafe, Penty Ante Room, and the little back room. Mame Harris's Little Brown Cottages by the CPR Depot is a routine call of mine. And there's the pool hall. Aye. But there's a brisk trade in the small novelty line. Petty intolerance, lust for teapot power, self-indulgence, sins of omission, snobbery within the family tyranny, that sort of thing. Quick turnover, but... He sighed. But what? Asked Willie. Can I take it? All is not well in hell? All is well in hell. It's up here. Sometimes I ask myself just what am I doing up on the territory again, century after century, selling sin to millennia of calls and eons of detailed work. All my lines are well established. Same old inventory. You think it's a challenge to sell gluttony today? Avarice, sloth, lust? Lust just sells itself. And the quality of the sinner. I simply do not make sinners the way they used to. I was wondering, Pipefitting said, about the war and Hitler and farther back. Does 30s depression reach down there? The devil shook his head. No missions? No scratch house parties? Folks on relief with nothing to eat but salt cod? No jobs? No idle hands. First thing good I ever heard about it. In a few regards, you might find it pleasant. Ah, come on. Hell's gotta be hell. Then we curl. You do? I don't believe it. You will, Mr. Brown, when your time comes. Tell me, just for curiosity's sake, how in hell can you possibly have ice? Artificial, the devil said. Hey, you're getting to sound all right, but how's artificial? Pipe-fitting said. Basaltic sheets, volcanic deposit, highly polished, which gives us a fast knockout game. Shirt sleeve Bonspiels. Pipe-fitting leaned over to pick up his toolbox and bag. Nice to hear hell ain't all that bad. Don't misunderstand. As you said, hell is hell. It has one renewable resource economy. Sin, said Willie. Yes, sin is infinitely renewable resource, and our economy is soundly based on it. We have as well a non-renewable natural resource. What might that be? Willie said, energy. I do have a threatening problem with that. You see, you people with all your wasteful ways are going to run out of oil and gas, and you're going to have to look elsewhere for your fuel and heat. He paused, lifted a dramatic finger, and pointed it straight down. Deep thermal energy. Mine. Mine. Hell was given to me when I was cast out of heaven. Hell, including all its thermal energy and mineral rights, is my province. When your time of energy needs comes, I will grant no leases and release no territorial rights or powers of decisions over my single non-renewable resource. Because when that brimstone runs out, I do not see how, in hell, we can salvage our economy. And when the brimstone runs out, since we could not diversify, I don't know what, in hell, we can do. The devil got a grip of his emotions. He lifted his attache to his lap, opened it, and brought out a cluster of what looked like foolscap-length legal sheets. He looked over to Wally and Pipe-fitting. He laughed. We have an expression we use often down there. Let those upper bastards freeze in the dark. Don't sound so neighborly to me, Pipe-fitting said. In my situation, you just might change your mind about that. You say so. Pipe-fitting had just picked up his toolbox, slung his bag over his shoulder. Judging from them papers of yours, looks like you two got private business to attend to. I'll be going. Nice meeting you. All mine. Did get round to finishing Mrs. Harrison's waste and overflow. Plugged up again. I got a skin over there, he said over his shoulder. As the door slammed behind him, Willie said, I take it your visit is about the bargain? You caught me unawares. I frequently do it that way. He got up from his chair and carried the papers over to the counter. Willie joined him there. These are some kind of contract? You're correct. Look it over. My soul for the Canadian Brier Championship. Right again. It's my usual Faust contract. It's much the same one I used decades ago with a ludicrous little one-balled paper hanger named Adolf. Now includes 3 items not even listed in the top deadly sin: bigotry, fantasticism, and hypocrisy. Never sell them short, especially the last one, which peaked in Victorian England and seemed to be on the rise once more. Anyway, Mr. McCrimmon, this is my standard soul for fair recompense agreement that has stood the test of time. Willie was finding it tough going, trying to find his way through the obfuscating fog of legalese. It does not bog down in hair-splitting detail, obscuring the intent of the agreement, nor does it oversimplify. I trust you will find no ambiguity. Willie left off reading to look up at him. I might, if you'd leave off yammering on and on and on while I try and read this thing. I shall try to get a laconic grip on myself, whatever that means. Willie went back to work on the contract, and the devil said no more till he'd finished the last page. Well, now, near as I can make out, it's my soul for the Canadian Brier Championship. That's our deal, Willie, and it's a good one, I assure you, for both of us. So you say, I do have one wee concern. Yes. Do you not have an expanded list of the 7 deadly sins? Right enough. But what about a balancing one? What are you driving at? How about one of moral principles? If you made a list, I'm sure trust would be up on top on one. Well, I'm not sure I can trust you. I see your point. I have to trust you too. Aye. Tell me, what makes you so fussy about my soul? I might as well be frank with you. I need a good third for my rink. You do? You've always dreamed of winning the Canadian Brier. Since long before the Ice Age, I've wanted to win our championship, Bonspiel. The Celestial Brier Playoffs. I can win it with you curling third for me. I see. Does that ease your concern? A wee bit. Did you entertain a sort of counter proposition, Clutie? You might call it a condition to the first offer. The devil got down with his elbows on the counter. Shoot. I have a fair rink of my own. I cannot say I've cared to curl third on a rink that couldn't beat the one I now skip. I'd be willing to curl for you in hell, only on the condition that your rink is a better one than mine. The one made up of crosscut Charlie Brown, malleable Charlie Brown, and pipe-fitting Charlie Brown, and me. And your proposition? You curl us a match. If we lose, then I curl third for you at no price when my time comes. At no price? The devil looked incredulous. Aye, you need not deliver me the Canadian Brier Championship. Well now, the devil straightened up. Do you really mean this? You're sold for nothing. I've never before. Well, that's just one side of it, mind. Well, he said. The other, if we win, then you must deliver. According to your terms of the first offer, I will skip a winning rink in the Canadian Brier playoffs, but again, at no cost to me. Head down, hands behind his back, and forked tail coiled to rest in his hip pocket, the devil turned and walked towards the Quebec heater. He spent contemplative minutes there, then came back to the counter. You really mean that? I do, Wally said. Well then, he slid the contract papers over and turned them round. From his vest pocket, he took out a pen, bent over, and began to write. Party of the second act shall retain his soul. Intact. Intact, the devil added. Retains his Macrimin soul intact, Woolley dictated. Macrimin continuing Presbyterian soul intact, should he and his rink skunk the devil's rink. Old Clutie finished the amendment and looked up to Willie. The match to be curled on our own rink, of course. All right with me, and not to be binding on any other member of my rink, you understand? Of course. Well, get it down there. The devil did that. And it'll have to be curled on a Sabbath evening. I only curl on the Sabbath, the devil said. It's again the by-law here in Shelby, thanks to Reverend Pringle and others, but I'm sure we can arrange it. There, the devil shoved the papers over to Willie. I've initialed all the changes and signed. He handed Willie his pen, warm as his curling boots had been. Please do the same. Willie examined the papers intently, then initialed and signed and slid them back to Clutie, who began separating them into two clusters. He handed one of them to Willie. Original for you, carbon for me. That figures, said Willie. My boots. I'll get to them immediately. Done by the Sabbath next. They must be. Next Sabbath it is. You've exchanged a good bargain for a bad one, Willie McCrimmon. We'll see in 4 days. So that concludes the chapter 3 of the Black Bonspiel. I hope you enjoyed that one as well. Looking forward to chapter 4, we'll get to look at Willie discussing the upcoming game in different terms to some of the different members of his team, depending on their ability to handle the situation. Just as a political message aside, I think it's worth noting that this was written in the 1960s. You might have noticed, a great deal of discussion about all of Canada and, talking about this meal coming from all parts of Canada, whereas the devil talks more about, not giving up his property rights to the land and to industry and those kind of things. Now, it is interesting to note because what was happening in the 1960s in Canada from a political perspective was a big war, a constitutional war between federal, Canadian powers and provincial, the individual provinces' powers. So the government of Canada just proposed this new Bill of Rights, which would be to cover all Canadians and would, enshrine all sorts of rights for them. And the government of Lester B. Pearson was looking progressively like that. However, Diefenbaker's conservatives at the time found, and the courts more importantly, found a way to get the Bill of Rights applied only to federal things and not to touch anything provincially. Mostly thanks, like I said, to their lawyers, and that's why the devil looks a little bit lawyerly in this chapter, if you will. So anyways, there's more and more to that political story that we could talk about, but suffice to say that Owali is much more of a united Canada, whereas the devil is kind of one of these lawyers fighting for little rights for these little pockets of Canada in competition with each other. Hope you enjoyed that little segue into the next chapter, and we'll see you again tomorrow.